All right, more getting to know you. So the last video, I kind of introduced you to initializing a repository, creating a file in that repository, adding it to the staged area, and then going above that into the committing area. I also taught you guys how to use Git status to kind of see where things were in terms of were they untracked or were they staged and so on. So in this video, we're just going to kind of play around more with that so you get more experience with that. So you kind of get more familiar and see how all these kind of areas work. So the thing you want to keep in mind again is always these kind of three areas, right? This untracked files and unstaged. Well, we'll talk about this later. Untracked files, staged files, and committed. Okay. So far where we left off, if I look at my file structure, I have a readme.txt and an instructions.txt, right? Now what I did was I created those files, did a git add of those files, which moved into the stage area, and git commit, which recorded them in history, which recorded the state of them in history, okay? So let's add some more files, okay? And I want to show you again the difference between untracked files area and stage files and how git add moves them into those two areas, right? So let's create a couple of files rather than just one file at a time, okay? So I'm going to create another file here. Let's call it joe.ruby, okay? So I'm a Ruby developer, so I like doing Ruby files. So I'm going to create this class. Don't worry about what I'm actually typing here. It doesn't actually really matter. You can type whatever you want. Okay, so I'm going to create a Joe class. And then I'm going to create a Mitch class. Whoops. Okay, again, the content of these files don't really matter. It's just some dummy files I'm creating. Okay. So if I look at my list of files now, I have the README and the instructions and Joe and Mitch. So at this point, remember, we've staged and committed readme.txt and instructions.txt. But Git doesn't know anything about Joe and Mitch, right? So if I do a git status, you'll see it doesn't say anything about readme and instructions because those are, again, recorded in history. They're tucked away. It only cares about the ones that we haven't recorded in history, which is Joe and Mitch. Now at this point, remember, these are untracked files. So they're sitting in this blue area down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm only going to add one of those files to the staged area, right? So I'm going to do git add Joe, okay? So Joe is sitting in the staged area and Mitch is sitting in the untracked files. So if I do a git status now, you'll see they're actually in separate areas, right? So changes to be committed, which is again your staged files, is Joe, and the untracked files is Mitch. Now remember what I said about the stage. Git commit only pulls from the stage. So let's say you're not really done with Mitch and you're done with Joe and you want to kind of commit the change for Joe. This is really nice. This is one of the nice features about Git. It actually gives you this staging area that your Git commit will only apply to that. So look, if I do a Git commit, passing in a comment, this commit is only going to apply to staged files, okay? So let's do this. Git commit.m initial commit of the Joe file. Okay, I'm going to hit enter. Now what I've done is Joe has moved up to here now into the committed area, right? Along with README and instructions. They're kind of tucked away. They're recorded in history. The state of them has been recorded in history. Mitch, on the other hand, is still sitting down in untracked files because that last git commit that I just did only affected the staged files. Okay, so remember that. So if I do a git status right now, boom, you'll see that I have that Mitch thing hasn't changed, it's still in our untracked files, and then but Joe has now moved on to a better place, to the committed area. Okay. So let's not leave Mitch behind. Let's get Mitch back in there. So let's do a git add mitch.rb. So he's moved up to the staged area now. If we hit git status, see changes to be committed. That's the stage area. Now let's move that into committed. So initial commit of the Mitch file. Boom. I do a git status. Nothing now to commit. So everything is now recorded in history. Those 4 files, their initial commands have been recorded in history. Again, if you do a git log, you'll see those 4 commits that I just did. This was for the very first file. This was for instructions. This was for Joe. This is for Mitch. Okay. So you can see how you can separate these files into different areas, right? Because you might have a bunch of changes that you're ready to commit. In other words, you're ready to record them in history, and the other ones you're not quite ready to record them yet, so don't stage those yet. Now the nice thing about Git is as you do these things, they actually kind of give you some commands kind of in there, right? So let's create another file. Let's call it Jane. Okay. Okay, created this Jane file, and if I do a git status, it's untracked right now. So if I do a git add Jane, all right, and I look at the status, it's in the staged area, right? Change is ready to be committed. But look how useful Git is. Git actually just tells you right there, what if you want to unstage it? In other words, you want to bring it back down to the untracked file area because you're not really ready to commit it on your next commit, right? So you just type exactly what it says here. Git reset head jane.rb. So I've had git status. Look, and now it's all of a sudden in untracked again. Okay, so Git gives you these little nice things. In fact, so here, look, git add to include on what will be committed. Whoops, sorry, I kind of dragged and dropped that. Didn't mean to do that. Okay, so hopefully you guys are getting a good understanding now of how to add files and where they sit in untracked and where they sit in stage and where they sit in committed. Now, one thing I didn't kind of talk about, which I'm going to talk about now, and it's kind of been hiding in the background here, is this unstaged changes bit. I kept talking about all these untracked files, right? Well, what about unstaged changes? So what this cycle that I talked about, going from the blue area to the staged area to the committed area, that applies to new files, right? Well, the exact same life cycle happens with files that have changes in them, okay? Because we created new files, we haven't changed those files yet, right? So let's take a look at our git status here. Okay, Jane is still sitting in untracked, right? So we don't know anything about Jane.rb, we don't know anything about her in terms of Git. But the other files, we know about them, and on top of that, they've been recorded in history. So let's start changing some of these. So let's take a look at our files. We have Jane, Mitch, instructions, Joe, readme. Let's say instructions. I want to start adding a bit more instructions to this, okay? So let's just open it up in our favorite text editor. Okay, and I'm going to just add some lines here. All right, step 1. Subscribe to the ETC podcast. Okay, so I just made a change to that file, right? So now, remember the state it was recorded in is recorded in history now, but now I've changed it, right? I've changed that file. So what does Git do with that? If I do git status, okay, you'll see it's under the modified area, right? Changes not staged for commit, not staged for commit. So the way you can view a modified file is that it's sitting in the exact same place as an untracked file. That's how I like to look at it. These two are essentially in the same state. In other words, they're not staged, and if I run a git commit, they're not going to be taken in there, okay? So, unstaged changes, that's what I call them, okay? So changes you made that you haven't staged yet are sitting in the same area as an untracked file, all right? Let's do another change. Let's change readme, okay? Readme. All right, this is a readme for Wicked Awesome Git repository. Let's add another line, okay? To learn more, watch more. All right. So I do a git status. Look, now readme is sitting in that area. Change is not staged for commit yet. An untracked file is not staged, right? So let's say on the next commit, I want to check in all these changes. I want to commit all these changes. The changes that I made to readme text, the changes that I made to instructions.txt, and the new jane.readme file, or jane.rb file. I want all those to be on my next commit. In other words, my next snapshot in history, my next recording in history, I want those to be in there, okay? So I'm going to add all of them. I'm going to git add readme.txt, right? So let's look at the status now. Look, it's now in the staged area, right? Instructions is still sitting in the blue area, as is Jane. So let's add the instructions as well. Do a git status. See now instructions has moved up there as well to changes to be committed, another staged area. And then lastly, let's add that Jane file. So I look at the status. Now look, all three of them are ready to be committed. So now when I run a git commit, everything sitting in the stage is going to be committed. In the past, we just happen to have only one file in that stage, but you can have as many files in that staging area as you want. Okay, so I'll do a git commit -m and pass it. Made a whole bunch of changes to the files. Now, this is not a very useful comment. You should always do useful comments, but it's just for tutorial purposes. Okay, do that. Now you look, three files have changed, and that's committed in now. Git status, nothing to commit. That means now everything's been recorded in history again, right? I've recorded another snapshot of the way the code looks. Okay, so if I do a git log, you'll see now I did my initial commit. That's a snapshot in time. This is a snapshot in time. Another snapshot in time. Another snapshot in time, and another snapshot in time. Okay, when you're committing, you're basically committing those changes of the files to a snapshot of the way the repository looks. Okay, so now that should give you a good understanding of, again, untracked files and unstaged changes. They go through the same process. You have to add them to the staged area, and then you commit them. Now there's one other trick I want to show you guys just before we end this video, and that's a little shortcut to adding files to the staged area. Okay, so let's change a bunch of files again. So if we look at our files, we have Jane, Mitch, instructions, Joe, whatever. Let's change README and instructions again. Okay, so I'm just going to change README, and I'm going to say to learn more, watch more, and don't forget to give yourself some time to relax. All right. And then let's change some instructions. All right. Okay, so let's add a step 2. You can download it from iTunes. Some shameless self-promotion going on there. Okay, so now we've got those two, and if I do a git status, you'll see they are not committed to the stage yet. Sorry, they're not staged yet. They're not in the staging area. So what I did in the past was I showed you I would add these files to the stage area, right? I'd do a git add readme, right? And then after that, I would do a git add instructions. Well, there's a really nice shortcut to adding everything that's unstaged. Okay, so if you want to just do a quick sweeping, add everything that's unstaged, sorry, that's untracked or unstaged changes, all you have to do is git add dot. Okay. And it'll basically add everything in the directory that's unstaged and untracked into the staging area. I'll do git add dot, and you'll see right away both files were added to the staged area. Now I just do a git commit. Unlike git commit automatically grabs everything from the staged area, right? But git add doesn't automatically grab everything from untracked and unstaged. You have to explicitly specify it with the file name or with a dot. Okay. So git commit added more instructions and README content. And we are done. Okay. Now you can research a bit more. You'll find that git add actually works with a bunch of other short forms, because you could do like directories with a star at the end and stuff like that, just to do shortcut. But you'll find that git add dot will come in handy a lot actually, and that's how most, or at least most people I've seen use it actually. They'll do all their changes they need to and do a git add dot. Okay, so now you should have a bit better understanding again of untracked files, unstaged changes, stage files, committed, all that stuff like that, and you should be good to go. On to the next video.